We begin page 24. Page 24. We saw last time, if I can ask everyone just to mute yourselves, please. And we saw last time the kind of theory, which was the three stages, if you remember, where the first stage is the original idea. The second stage is after that excitement. Initially, excitement dies down. Then it's about having the strength to really sort of build it in from oneself and from within oneself. And then the third stage, which is that beauty of actually having acquired it for oneself. And that's the culmination, the climax, which really puts together the first two stages, which seem to be opposite, but actually come together in the third stage. And he pointed out how this pattern is something which you see with the beginning of the Jewish people, the exodus from Egypt. You see this in the months of the year as well. And now he's going to point out a few different times where we see this in the natural world as well. Remember that there's a premise here, which is a very important one, which really underlies, I think, all sort of deep Jewish thought. The term, we would call it is machshava, which means the depth of Jewish thinking. And that is the following. The two worlds that we live in, which are the physical and the spiritual, are not two separate, disparate worlds. Even though it's sometimes, difficult to see how these two things actually mesh together. But essentially, they are two sides of the same coin, which means that everything that we see in the physical world around us, which we can touch and feel and taste and sense with all of our senses, is really got its roots in the spiritual world. And therefore, any spiritual concept which derives from the Torah, as we saw from the beginning of the Jewish people, as we see in the months of the year, then that means that is how everything really is. That is the root of everything. And therefore, it's no surprise to find, and in fact, it must be, that all of the physical world as well is going to have the same concepts which are appearing time and time again. That's really the premise of this thought and the premise of what we're about to do now, which is to start sort of bringing it down to earth. And that makes a difference because then it means that those things that happen to us, like we spoke about at the beginning, the things that happen in our life, that life becomes something which isn't just operating at a coincidental, purely physical level, but rather these are spiritual patterns. When we can tap into those, we can identify those, it really makes a difference and helps us to navigate the experiences, the challenges that happen to us in our life. So let's begin at the top of page 24. In Aggadic writings, Aggadah is the non-halachic sections of the Talmud of the Gemara, we're told that the unborn child is taught the whole Torah in the womb. An angel teaches him all the mysteries of creation and all that he will ever need to know in order to reach perfection, his own chelek portion in Torah. Beautiful idea that each one of us has our own portion in Torah. We say in the Amidah, V'tein on Shabbos actually, V'tein chelkeinu b'sorosecha. Give us our portion in your Torah. One of my colleagues at Hazvinian actually, Rebbetzin Shalvi Friedman, she started an organization which was actually to encourage women to learn Torah, and it was called Chelkeinu, our portion. Which means, the idea being that Torah is for everyone, and we just have to, each one of us has to try and achieve our potential so we can sort of learn our portion. And we're each given that portion before we're even born, before we're even a sort of physical entity, whilst we're still in the womb, then that is a designated chelek, a designated portion. And the Gemara continues, a lamp is lit above his head, and by its light he sees from one end of the world to the other, which is an understanding that this spirituality is what's going to guide him for the rest of his life. As the child is born, however, the angel strikes him on the mouth and he forgets all that he has learned and is born a simple and unlearned baby. Okay, that's interesting. It says strikes him on the mouth. There's some, I don't know, common held belief or knowledge, which is that this part of the nose, the indent over here, just under the nose, is where the angel has struck someone. I have no idea where that comes from. I don't think there's a source for that at all. But the idea of striking on the mouth, that does come from the Gemara. The obvious question is, why teach a child so much and then cause all the teaching to be forgotten? Right? What's the point? What is the idea behind this? That the child learns all of the Torah, then forgets all of it and has to start from scratch all over again. But the answer is, he continues, that it is not forgotten. It's driven deep into the unconscious. A person may be born with no explicit knowledge, but beneath the conscious surface, intact and rich beyond imagination, is all that one wishes to know. A lifetime of hard work learning Torah and working on one's personality will constantly release and bring to consciousness innate wisdom, which means it's really deep down inside of everyone, somewhere in our neshama, there is this wisdom. And therefore, that which we have to do during the course of our lifetime is not to discover something new that we never learned, that is unfamiliar, it's completely unfamiliar to us, but rather it's actually deep inside us. And all we need to do is to dig deep and then to bring it out. And of course, we need external help to do that, whether it's the books that we read, the Torah that we learn, the rabbis, the Rebbitzins in our lives, all sorts of experiences in life that we can learn from. But essentially, it's a very different perspective from saying, this is something which is actually not connected to me. This is something which is kind of foisted upon me. No, the Torah understanding is this is the neshama. This is what the neshama is. He continues, often when one hears something beautiful and true, one has the sensation not of learning something, but of recognizing something. A sensitive individual will feel intimations of his or her own deep intuitive level often. I often actually use the phrase, you probably all heard it from me, with something I ask sometimes, does this resonate with you? Does it resonate with you? Or I ask someone to share an idea that resonates with you. Because there'll be some ideas that you understand better, and some ideas you understand less. There'll be some ideas that talk to you, that speak to you. But I think what's truly happening is that each person's neshama, much like when something resonates, which means that it's, each person has a unique frequency, like each material has a frequency. Something that resonates means that it is using the same frequency that material is on. So your neshama, your soul, has its own unique, as we said, portion, or if you like, its own frequency that it's operating on when it's receiving and it's broadcasting. And there are some ideas which will resonate because they will be at the same type of frequency that your neshama is operating on. And those are the ideas which I think you've got to hold on to. Those are the ideas, when you find something like that that really speaks to you, then those are the type of things where, as the Gemara brings from a number of the sages, it says, Hu haya omer. He used to say, there used to be ideas that they lived with. The ideas that sort of came up again and again in their lives and that were sort of kept for posterity by their students because they'd heard them so many times throughout their life. So those are the type of things where a person can sort of, intuitively understand that this is actually something which is mine. And that's really coming from, he says, that Torah that one learned before they were even born. He continues, the pathway is clear. The person is born with a lifetime of work ahead. Spiritual wisdom and growth are hard-earned. But the inspiration is within. You were once there. And that inner sense of inspiration provides the motivation, the source of optimism and confidence that genuine achievement is possible, even assured, if the necessary effort is made. Again, you've got those three stages. You've got the first stage, which is that initial burst of inspiration, in this case, the angel teaching the unborn child the entire Torah. Then you've got the hard work, which is when we grapple with trying to get back to that place, trying to find the parts, which is our portion, which resonates with us, that which is going to sort of carry us and uplift us throughout our life. And then we have the stage where we've reached that unity. We found that which speaks to us. And maybe this is a lifetime's work, but we've got that ability to sort of own the Torah that we've learned. He continues page 25 with another application, a second application of this. Characteristic feature of childhood and relatively of the teenage years is inspired optimism and the lack of a sense of limitation. Children believe that they can become anything, right? If you've ever asked a child, what do you want to be? You will probably get the answer of a fireman, a footballer, an astronaut. No one's going to say, I want to be an accountant. No offense to any accountants on the call, okay? But no one's going to say, I want to be a lawyer and an accountant, and a teacher, and because space and fires and racing drivers and things, right? It's not just that those things are exciting. It's not just that. They're not limited. They're not limited by all of those things, which as an adult, as a grown-up, then that the practicalities and it doesn't work and it doesn't happen. And I have to say, actually, it's the beauty of the teenage years. It is a beauty. And sometimes, it can be covered up as an adult and you start limiting yourself without thinking outside of what you know and outside of the box. And sometimes it's quite healthy to take a step back and say, okay, but forget all of that stuff. Forget all the limitations. What do I really want to? After that, you can think about it in more practical terms. but try to just sometimes think like a teenager in that sense, you know? What do I really want to do? I've got, you know, in the next 5, 10, 20 years, where is it that I'd like to be? Where do I really want to see myself? And after that, you can sort of think about the limitations and the practicalities. But that's what a child and a teenager is, that they believe they can become, you know, anything. There's a lack of limitation. By the way, that's why children don't find it, especially teenagers, maybe just mine, but I think generally teenagers, they don't like being limited. So therefore time is a limiting factor, right? They don't like being limited by time. What do you mean? I have to organize something. I have to arrange to be at a certain place. I have to wake up at a certain time. That's limiting my infinite possibilities. You know, I'd like to live in the world where anything is possible. I want to live in the world with no limits at all. Now, as an adult, you'll kind of like smile because you know what normally happens is that nothing happens, right? You know, nothing gets done, or they don't wake up, whatever it is. But as far as they're concerned, where's that coming from? It's coming from the place of not wanting to limit myself. I don't want to box myself into a certain time and an arrangement and a waking up or going, you know, and therefore it's coming from a good place in a way. It's coming from that sense of expansion. He continues, the world is larger than life to a child. A child is not oppressed by a limited sense of what is possible. A child has simply to be exposed to almost any form of greatness. Unfortunately, all too often physical and meaningless, to begin fantasizing about becoming or achieving that same thing. And this is an important point as well, by the way. When it comes to that age of childhood, then role models are very important. Role models are very important. And the more that the child is exposed to, then the more that they will aspire to be that. And they may not understand, they certainly won't understand the limitations where an adult might say, yeah, but that's not exactly, you know, it's just entertainment. It's not exactly the right thing, or it's not for you, or it's not for us, or it's not, etc. The child will find that hard to understand. And therefore, very quickly, there's this, you know, I can do this too, the fantasizing about it. And that's why we do have to be careful in terms of what our teenagers are aspiring to. That's really something that parents have to be aware of. However, he continues, later in life, one is lucky to have any inspiration left at all. Many adults wonder why life seemed so rich when they were teenagers, why they could laugh or cry so richly, so fully back then, and why life seems so flat at best now. But the idea is, as we've described above, first comes a phase of unreal positivity, a charge of energy, and then life challenges one to climb back to real achievement independently, which means it's not really flat and it's not really forgotten. It's deep down, it's there. You're the same person that you were when there were no limits and you were a teenager and you were having the most fun in the world and your opportunities were endless. And that's inside of you. That's deep inside of you. The problem is that we don't like to work. And therefore, when we have to do the work, we just kind of like give up. We say, oh, forget it, and it's gone and it's disappeared. And you know, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to plot. I'm just going to sort of, you know, when you go to weddings, you see the different circles. You've got like all the friends of the chassan or the kala, they're in the middle. They're like 19 or 20, 21, 20, you know, they're like dancing like energetically, right? And then around there, you've got the people who are like a bit friendly, or their family, and they feel they should be quite near the middle. And then you've got everyone else. And maybe this is just the men's side, I don't know. Right? And then you've got everyone else who's kind of just like plodding because they need to be there, but they're not like the life and the heart and the soul, isn't it? And that can happen in life as well. That can happen in life. But essentially, what we're doing is we shouldn't be forgetting those goals, and we shouldn't be forgetting those aspirations and think that all we can do now is plod along. What we have to realize is actually we're going places, but we're just going places in a way that requires effort, that takes time, where you'll have step after step after step after step before you'll see something that actually comes to fruition, before you'll see the goal. It's like that with learning. You know, I speak to people about learning, and I say to them, don't expect that you'll learn for sort of 1 hour and that's it, and you'll be a different person. Half an hour, you know, Rabbi, I'm not seeing anything. You told me this is going to be great, and I'm not seeing anything yet. But if you do that every single week for a year, and you put in that time and that effort, and you're learning themes which are really sort of talking to your neshama, they're talking to your soul, of course you'll see something. But it's that work. It's putting in that work, which can feel like you're plodding places, but you're not. You're moving, you're going forward, you're reconnecting to that neshama inside of you, which has got all that inspiration in it. And he continues, the last application, a third one, bottom page 25, is to be found in the Baal Teshuvah world. The Baal Teshuvah describes a person who's discovered a Torah-oriented way of life after living a more secular lifestyle, which means a person who's come to Torah at a later stage in their life has discovered parts, elements of Judaism that they didn't know about before. Many Baalei Teshuvah experience an unexpected and disturbing letdown. Often the pathway is as follows. The young person discovers Torah, becomes inspired by a teacher, and begins to study. Every Torah experience in learning or in contact with the Orthodox world is spectacular. Every text studied is alive with significance, and every Shabbat experience is high. And there is a phase of euphoria. That's the initial, the first time you do anything. It's like, wow, it's incredible, the Shabbos project. You keep one Shabbos, the first time you keep one Shabbos, and it's amazing. We've done this, and people have gone through, and then they're on a massive high from the first time. That's your first stage. That's your initial boost. That's the euphoria. It's the motivation, which, by the way, we said is a gift from Hashem. It's almost like unnatural, it's a present, it's a matana. Somehow he continues on page 26, subtly, this changes and growth has to be sought. Learning may be difficult. Often the difficulties seem to far outweigh the breakthroughs. Many are tempted not to persevere in their learning. That's the second stage. What do we do when it's not as exciting? Because it's not the first time. It's not the first time I kept Shabbat. It's the second. It's the third. It's the fourth. It's not the first time I've come on a Thursday night. First time was great. It's a brand new book, and it was new, and it was different. It was exciting. But now it's the second time, and it's the third, and it's the fourth. And now you've got to stick at it. You've got to persevere. He continues, of course, this is exactly the way it must be. Real growth in learning comes when real effort is generated. Just as physical muscle is built only against strenuous resistance, so too spiritual and personality growth is built only against equivalent resistance. Which means when we're feeling resistance, we're pushing against something, we should actually be loving that. We should be smiling. Because as long as there's no resistance, then we're not actually growing. Actually, I do running. I don't go to the gym. But I can imagine people that go to the gym, maybe some of you can nod your heads if you agree. If you're doing the weights and you don't feel anything, it's not like there's no resistance. It's just like, it's a walk in the park. You're not doing anything. I can imagine. And he nods. No one goes to the gym. Ellie, right? You're not doing anything. There's got to be a bit of resistance there. Then you're working. Then you're going places. He continues, a person who understands this secret can begin to enjoy the phase of work. A maturity of understanding makes clear that the first phase was artificial. It is the second phase which yields real development. Imagine that. Imagine if we can enjoy that. And you can, exercise is a good muscle. It's a very good muscle because it is painful in the middle, but it can still be enjoyable. When you're in the flow and you're doing that, even with the resistance or because of the resistance, because it's hard, but you can do this. You've had the initial burst. This is something that's going to improve. This is taking you places. And if we can do that in life, when we have those experiences where it's not the initial burst, but now we've got to keep going, we've got to persevere. And we can remind ourselves it's pushing against that resistance that's really building this into my personality, that's really integrating this into who I am. Then suddenly that phase becomes enjoyable. And as we said last time, where it's very often we're searching for that first phase all of the time, which is the unhealthy thing to search for. We're searching for that all of the time, but rather we can get to a stage where we're enjoying that second phase as well, maybe in a more real way. Okay, we're going to stop there.